Welcome to another episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and today we are back with a brand new microphone. If you guys remember from my last video, my last microphone went bust. I couldn't do an in-depth review this weekend because I had no good mic to do it, and I like to make sure those videos are of top quality. So we are back with a pretty good mic, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy it from here on out. I'm going to try to get an in-depth video sometime this week before the weekend comes. Usually my plan is I always get one on Sunday or Saturday for you guys, but this weekend was the one exception. So I'm going to do my best to make sure I get you guys something beforehand. But in the meantime, in the midst of the new raid coming out, the level cap increase, all this stuff that's happening, I actually want to take a moment and look at the tournaments that we just finished not too long ago. I mentioned before in my last video when we were just having a little bit of fun is that I made number 126 in the tournament, and I only spent about, it was like 50 to 100 crystals. And the good thing is I got a full furnace, a full fusion furnace, which is pretty good. 100 crystals when it retails for 1400. It's pretty nice. But what I wanted to do today, because some of you may remember from a video from way back when mods came out, is that I studied economics back in college as an undergrad. Now I'm doing law. But when I study economics, there's a lot of cool things that relate to this game. And I even mentioned back then how it's going to play out with mods. And we see that, as I said, there's some sort of equilibrium that we meet where we have a Stormtrooper Han maxed out with speed. And, you know, everything just kind of merged into one equilibrium as we now see. And as I mentioned way back when. So I just wanted to take a moment and just kind of analyze the tournament that we had a while ago, because it's not like we're normally used to. Usually when it comes to premium characters, we see that we have the chromium and rhodium packs, and how those always work is that you spend about $200 and you get the character all the way to 7 stars. However, auctions in this situation, which that's what tournaments are, they're an auction. They're a bit different, and it kind of introduces a new element in this game when it comes to getting premium characters. So I thought it'd be fun to sit back, relax. I'm not going to go too much into economic jargon. We're just going to have fun about this topic, just so you can see how economics can apply to games like Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. And the main thing is that, well, just a quick summary. If you don't know what econ is, or economics, whatever you want to call it, it's pretty much just a study of decision making. People usually have the misunderstanding that it's about money, and yeah, money's one part of it, but it's not the entirety of it. We mainly look at decision making and getting the biggest bang for your buck, pretty much. So you have so many things at your disposal. You only can do so much because you're only one person. So how do you get the most out of that? And we see that in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. We have all these characters, so many limited credits, crystals, you name it, and you only have so much time in sim tickets. So you try to pick characters and invest in characters you know will be good and they will last in the long run. And that's why we usually laugh at the fact when people have maxed out Ugnaughts or Mob Enforcers, because they're very expensive and they're not that good. So the benefits not outweighing the cost, and that's all about economics there. So we're going to go ahead and look at tournaments and just pick on a few things, pretty much how this works and how it's related to auction theory. Then we're going to go ahead and move into some minor details. One thing I really want to talk about is diminishing returns, or diminishing marginal returns, whatever you like to call it. And we're going to talk about the winner's curse. And then lastly, we're going to go ahead and give you one sharp criticism that I found out, the developers found out, and I hope they look into it in the next tournament, because it is quite a big flaw in this system that we had. So to kind of start all this off, there's a very big similarity between Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes tournaments and auctions. And this isn't like the typical auction where you go to a car show and then you have the guy going number 9, 30, 29, 29, 29, 50, 50, 55, sold. It's not like that. It's not like eBay either, where you have one item up for sale and people all over the world are trying to bid to get this product, whatever it may be, Star Wars memorabilia, you name it. People are bidding on that there, but it's not the same here. In typical auction theory, with auctions like that, which we call them open bid ascending, or open auctions with an ascending bid. So essentially the winner who has the highest bid in the very end wins it all. And that's not how it works here, because we have several tiers. So just because you didn't get number 1 doesn't mean you're going to get anything. You will get something, because we have a first, second, third, fourth, going all the way down to like the 20th, 30th tier. So you will win something, whether it's gear. You will get some Shoretrooper shards, but you won't get the awesome benefits of being in the top 100 if you fall that far below. So you can actually look at this in the supply and demand faction, which, we all, if you didn't take econ, or if you did, the main thing to take away is guns and butter and supply and demand. That's all you need to know when you take an economics class. So I'm actually going to make a nice little graph, put it on the screen here, and we're going to, pretty much all it is that the supply here is the amount of tiers that we have for Shoretrooper shards. When you hit a certain tier, you get supplied of so many Shoretrooper shards, and then we have a demand, which is pretty much the desire to get Shoretrooper shards. Hard word to say for some odd reason. And unfortunately, I do not know what the equilibrium is because I don't have the data, but essentially where those 2 points meet, that's pretty much where people are investing so much money to get so much of Shoretrooper shards, and that's something we don't know due to the lack of data, but I would love to get that. However, it's all, financial stuff, and they probably don't want to show how much money was made off this event. Kind of moving on. How this is related to an auction is that it's open, so you know what the previous person bids because we have the ranking and it shows you how much someone bid. And essentially, instead of calling out your name or waving a sign saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm the next bidder here," you bid by the number of battles you have. So the more battles you have, that's essentially you putting in your name to raise your bid. And the more battles you do, the higher you get up there, and the higher you get up in the ranks, you get more Shoretrooper shards or better rewards. And it kind of gets a bit fuzzy now because one, we're assuming that you have a huge inventory and you can win every single one of your battles, which those are two very big assumptions, but not everyone can meet those assumptions. So how really people are doing this is it really comes to digging into your pocket and getting crystals, and crystals is essentially the microcurrency of this game. And what we see here is that the people in the top 100 especially, they have huge inventories. And they also have, some of them have big pockets. So a combination of big inventories and a big pocket gets you a lot of points and a lot of battles. And I'll show you some examples of what I saw in other people's tournaments as well as mine. And it can get pretty astronomical. And for someone like maybe you or me, you might not be able to compete at that level, which we'll talk about in a few moments here when we get to diminishing returns. So a couple things that I did see in the very end how this works is that the top 100 is super competitive. When you would win a battle, you might get maybe 3 ranks ahead, and then you might fall back really fast. It's a very fast environment and a very competitive environment. And then, as I said, usually people at the very top are talking like maybe top 30 here. They have either a lot of money or a lot of crystals they're dumping in because they want to get Shoretrooper. Very unique character, very limited. We don't know when the event's coming back just yet. And so it gets very competitive up there. The next thing that we'll talk about in a moment here is that the more crystals you start putting in, eventually there comes a point where you're not getting as much bang for your buck. So I'm going to give you some kind of financial advice in a few moments here about when you should stop. And then the last thing that I really want to talk about, this is the criticism here that we'll talk about momentarily, is that I noticed that there's a huge problem of collusion here, or an oligopoly, whatever you want to talk about it as. Essentially, this is where people who find themselves in the same tournament, they'll collude or work with each other so they can occupy certain ranks. And I have a great picture I'm going to show you that happened in my particular tournament, and it was crazy. About 20 people, same guild, were working together, and essentially what they do is that they put some really bad defensive team in so someone else can just throw all their characters at them. Even if they're very bad, they can destroy the other person's lineup because they agree that they'll work together, and they can accrue tons of points. And there was just a solid block of like 20 people in the same guild that got some of the best rewards in the top like 20, 25 or whatever it was. Big problem. The developers are aware of it, but I'll talk more about that in a few minutes here. But what I want to get into first is diminishing returns, because this is a huge model for diminishing returns, and we have a couple other examples in the game as well. Here, though, essentially diminishing returns, in case you don't know, is that when you start putting input in, the more input you put in, eventually the output starts decreasing, and sometimes you might get a negative output depending on the situation, which we don't really see that in the game, but in certain situations like, kitchens, for example, once you have too many people working in the kitchen, you start losing output because people are bumping into each other, fighting. Not exactly the case here, but we do see that once you put in too much output or too much input, eventually you're not getting as much bang for your buck. You're putting in, let's say, 1,000 crystals, but once you get into that top 50, you're not moving up as much. You're moving maybe 3-4 ranks, and then you might fall back and you have to spend more money to get up there in the ranks. But there is a point where you definitely should invest either your free battles or you should invest a little bit of crystals like I did myself. And it's hard to say. I can't give you a solid number because every lobby is different, because we're all grouped by different levels, by different powers, by different arena ranks. So it's very hard to give you an exact number of how much money you should spend or how many crystals or how many battles you should do for free. And plus the other problem is we don't know what other people value Shoretrooper at or value being at you know, let's say level or rank 100. It's very difficult to measure something like that in a game like this where everyone's unknown, we don't know their preferences. So what happens is you definitely should do your free battles and maybe invest 50 crystals, something very minimal like I did, because there comes a point where you do a couple battles and you're jumping like a couple hundred ranks. Maybe sometimes after like 5 battles you just jumped up 1,000 ranks. So very, very beneficial to do something, but there gets a point where you're only getting so many ranks ahead, and that's when you should stop, because it gets very competitive and you're dumping a lot of money, and then there's a chance you'll get dropped back quite significantly. So I have a nice little graph to show that, and it's perfect. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you can look at it. You see where we go, and then it's pretty much that first section shows, yeah, definitely invest. You can get more out of your money. Then there comes a part where your returns start diminishing. You're getting something, but not as much. And then there comes a point where you're spending so much and you're just kind of losing output, which isn't the case in our situation for our auction. Next thing we're going to talk about is the winner's curse, which is a funny scenario where the people who really, really want the item and they end up winning is that they kind of overestimate what your preference is or what my preference is. And as we see in this one example, this wasn't from my tournament, I saw this on Reddit, where the top 2 people, they essentially overbid on Shoretrooper by like 10,000, which is crazy. I think number 3, number 4, something like that had like 19,000 or 17,000, and number 1 overbid them at 27,000, and then number 2 definitely overbid number 3, number 4 by quite a lot, versus the smart thing would be to overbid them just by a couple hundred points, but not by 10,000. So they overspent and spent extra money that they shouldn't need to get Shoretrooper, unless they really just wanted to play, then more to them. So that's something that we see in auctions where you don't know what other people are going to bid, but you definitely want the item. So you just go to town and just start bidding. And then at the very end, once you kind of look at other people, you realize you spent too much. And that's what we call the winner's curse. And we see that in a lot of scenarios here. Now, here comes the criticism. I already mentioned this a little bit ago, but the problem with this event, I definitely liked it. It was fun, I'm not gonna lie, but it has to be structured in a way where people cannot collude, because that is a problem. Because now you're not just competing for fun, it's not just having fun. Now you're kind of, I don't know if cheating is the right word, but now you're kind of playing in an unfair manner where you're working through an app like Discord, Facebook, some sort of group chat where you have your guild members in, and you're like, hey buddy, I see you're there. Why don't we both put low defensive characters in so we can just constantly battle each other? And they just keep battling each other in the top 50 or top 20. So they're having really easy battles and able to get a lot of points, even if they're using some really weak lineup, like let's say a weak Boba Fett, Mob Enforcer Ugnaught. They're able to still win because the defensive squad on their buddy's team is very, very low, and it's very undergeared. And we see that a lot. The developers notice that, and that's what happened in my tournament. I'm going to show a picture. I'm going to blur out all the names of the people because I don't want to expose them. I'll leave the name of the guild so you can at least see the giant block here. And I'm not saying they did anything wrong because there wasn't any rule, but I'm pretty sure it has to get resolved. But there was like a block of 20 people from the same guild, back to back to back to back, that got into the same in that same situation where they were kind of working together to make sure they all benefited. And it's hard where people like you and me, we're battling people with real lineups, real tough lineups. And then there's them where they're able to use their full inventory to their maximum capacity because they have buddies that are in the same situation and they're able to just get some easy battles in constantly. So big problem, as we see here. A lot of other tournaments had that problem, but I don't think it was as bad as my particular one. So again, I'm not criticizing that guild or anything like that. It's just a criticism of the event itself. It's kind of like a tax loophole. You can't blame the person using the tax loophole because it's there, but if you want to fix the problem because you don't believe it's right, you should definitely close it to make sure that the problem doesn't happen. So pretty much that's all I have to say about it. That's kind of my economic analysis on this whole thing. I had fun. I got a fusion furnace for 50 crystals. Some people got a full droid collar for absolutely nothing. So you can't complain in that regard. But let me know how it is for you. Did you enjoy this lesson? If you like, I can do some more economic analyses in the future, depending on what the event is. We can do it on crystal spending, for energy, whatever you guys want to do. I definitely like economics. I definitely like Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and those two are just bread and butter, and they work so well. So let me know what you guys think. Did you enjoy this? Did you learn something new? Leave it in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we will talk again later. Peace out.